shooters from every demographic, when in fact they're not a very diverse bunch. He also thinks that postmodernism and Marxism are dangerous in that nihilist way, which... It is a little confusing approaching Peterson's work from the point of view of philosophy, because words like postmodernism and Marxism, relativism and nihilism have technical meanings that he tends to wind around. And one popular tactic for arguing against him is to explain those technical meanings and show how he's using them incorrectly. But more talented demons than me have tried that before, and it doesn't seem to faze him. So what I'd like to do is show why his attack on nihilism isn't all it's cracked up to be, and then present an alternative. Peterson seems to use the word nihilism as interchangeable with relativism, which it isn't really, and we'll get to that. But if you follow his work, you'd be forgiven for thinking that relativism is a bad thing. The good doctor has condemned moral relativism multiple times in his lectures. He went on the Joe Rogan show to say that it was, quote, just wrong, and 12 Rules for Life contains a foreword by psychologist Norman Doidge presenting Peterson's whole career as a counter to relativism. The supposed link is that if we were all die-hard relativists and every goal was as good as every other, then we would never truly value anything. Hence, nihilism and societal collapse. And Peterson's not the only one worried about this. The philosopher Stephen Hicks and neuroscientist Sam Harris see relativism as a rejection of science and Enlightenment values. We'll come back to both of them. Former Breitbart editor Ben Shapiro has linked it with cultural decay, and in his video The Ugly Truth About Relativism, with over 90,000 views, ex-software salesman Stefan Molyneux says that relativism is part of a plot driven by a demonic thirst for power. There's also this video from Weird Male YouTube, which honestly has one of the best openings since Genesis.
So this video is going to be on, does moral relativism lead to pussy worship?
The common theme running through a lot of these thinkers is that objectivity, which is associated with things like reason, the Enlightenment, modernism, the West, and Judeo-Christian values, is good. As has been pointed out by an inspiring angel in another video also featuring wings and nudity, many of those terms are more complicated than they appear. Whereas relativism, which is associated with feelings, social justice warriors, the Not West, postmodernism, and dangerous leftist thinking, is bad. A lack of strongly grounded values can leave individuals, and maybe societies, open to corruption by demonic influences. Peterson actually has quite an unusual stance compared to some of those others, and I'm not lumping him in with them carelessly. Down here, everyone's punishment is bespoke. But it's worth noting that some of those who claim to have the answer to nihilism do share some political themes. The question for now is, how can you confront the meaninglessness of your life without falling into nihilism and despair? You have a few options. One is to believe in God. Yeah. Another is to invent some new goals and meaning through pop psychology and recycling a lot of religion, like Jordan Peterson does, taking God's dead corpse and turning it into fertilizer. Or, if magic isn't doing it for you anymore, why not try science? In 2010, neuroscientist Sam Harris responded to this alleged problem of nihilism and relativism. In his book The Moral Landscape, he claims that there are objective answers to moral questions, and that science can help humans discover them. He isn't saying that there will someday be single scientific answers to all moral questions, but he is trying to find objective values without religion.
But the demagogues are right about one thing. We need a universal conception of human values.
He thinks that people are too tolerant, and that this is a symptom of a dangerous cultural relativism, a theme he shares with Peterson, Doidge, Molyneux, Shapiro, and others. Harris thinks you should all be brave, free speech warriors and face the truth. If there are facts about morality, then doesn't it stand to reason that some people, or cultures, might know more about those facts than others?
Whenever we are talking about facts, certain opinions must be excluded. That is what it is to have a domain of expertise. How have we convinced ourselves that every culture has a point of view on these subjects worth considering?
He's particularly concerned that you are too tolerant of behaviors that he associates with religion, and conservative Islam especially, like requiring women to wear veils and honor killings. Although in fact, both of those behaviors have parallels in societies that aren't quite so influenced by conservative Islam, and arguably say more about controlling women than they do about religion. What this illustrates, though, is that for Harris, the quest to find objective value in life is not just for the fun of it. In his book, The End of Faith, he explicitly discusses these issues in the context of American military intervention, racial profiling, and torture. Apropos, at the end of this talk, a man comes on stage. Who is this guy? Is this TED? Is this TED Talks? Is this Theodore T. Talks? Anyway, a man comes on stage and points out something Harris neglected to mention, that many Muslim women wear veils voluntarily.
I mean, can you engage in a conversation with that kind of woman without seeing kind of cultural imperialist?
Harris replies that voluntary doesn't really mean all that much in certain contexts. They might be brainwashed by their delusional belief systems.
And so I think we shouldn't be so eager to always take their word for it.
So Harris has allowed himself the possibility of saying, I know what's good for you, and I don't necessarily need to ask. And it seems like he's at least open to the idea that those in possession of the moral facts can be justified in acting violently against the morally ignorant. That's the power of having objectivity on your side. Elsewhere, Harris mentions brain scans as a way of objectively knowing who's happy and who's not. But how can you tell the difference between a brain scan of somebody who's really happy, according to Harris, and somebody who's merely deluded? Well, you can't. So even though he highly values the facts, it seems like some are more valuable than others, and it's not clear on what basis he's weighing them up. Interestingly, this criticism is similar to one put forward by another thinker, Jordan Peterson. He and Harris agree on an awful lot, but one thing Peterson has pointed out is that there are so many facts in the realm of objective science that you need some story to help you pick and choose which facts will be relevant. Philosophers would call that story an ideology, but that's not a word Peterson likes, and he has his own ideas, which we'll get to. Even more interestingly, Harris's idea is an accidental rip-off of a theory developed by philosopher Richard Boyd in 1982 called The Homeostatic Cluster Property Theory of Metaethical Naturalism. Sexy title. Boyd thought that words like good and evil refer to real properties out there in the material world, and that therefore statements like murder is bad are capable of being objectively true, or at least true in the same way as scientific statements are, which prompts the question, to what exactly do these words refer? Boyd's answer is that they are cluster properties, groups of things that tend to go together. The example he uses is actually the same one Harris does. Health. There are all kinds of things that we would want to include in a definition of the word healthy, like your heart should be beating and you should be able to breathe. But do you have to be a certain size in order to be healthy? Do you have to not be in pain? Can you have a beating heart and be unhealthy? There's a cluster of properties here somewhere that makes up the definition of the word health, but we're never going to pin down a definite list because that's just not how the concept works. Despite that vagueness, though, it's still very obviously useful and meaningful. Similarly, Boyd thinks that a word like good refers to a cluster of things that are non-morally good for humans, like sharing friendship, sharing love, having fun, watching quality YouTube videos. But just like with health, you're never going to be able to pin down a full list because the concept just isn't like that. And here's the big takeaway. If we say John is healthy, we could be talking about any number of things in the cluster of health. Whether he has a disease, whether he works out, whether he has a good relationship with his mother, all of which are objective, but whether the sentence John is healthy is true will still depend on what aspect of his health we're talking about. It will still be relative to the context in which we are saying it. So this relative objective binary that people like Peterson and Harris are working with is an oversimplification. The theory Boyd defends is called moral naturalism. It's about as objective as ethical theories get. But statements about morality will still be true or false relative to the context in which we use them. Objectivity and relativity can go together. We've seen that attempts to find objective meaning in life through science can get pretty complicated pretty